Mr. Harrison Thompson. He is a cognitive behavioral therapist.
Yes.
Right? Got it right today. I want to talk about the untold side of love.
Okay.
Right? Untold side of the relationships between men and women, focusing mainly on the men. I could be a little selfish today.
I think we have this bad habit of waiting until there's the problem to go and check things out, right?
Absolutely.
And when it comes to therapy, I am so sorry. There is only so much I could do in the last hour when you decide to come to me when your marriage is on the brink of destruction and fall apart, you know? If my wife has the opportunity to be angry, I should as well. If my wife has the opportunity to go through stress, I should as well. And only men can create those spaces. We can't think that women can create those spaces for men because they're not going to be what we need it to be. I went off to get certified, to study, to become equipped to actually show people what they already know. It just goes to show it's not necessarily knowledge that you progress on. It's the application of that knowledge.
Absolutely.
And one of the main goals of a therapist is to kind of reframe that same information in a different way that can help that person gain some insight in ways they couldn't see before.
Welcome to the new episode of the Miles Type Podcast. This is Miles Jr. I'm your host, and as always, the vision and goal of this podcast is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right? Got a great pod for today. This has been a conversation that I have been eager to have. I'm excited to have this conversation, excited for the guests that we have joining us today. I want us to give a round of applause to our guest, Mr. Harrison Thompson. He is a cognitive behavioral therapist.
Yes.
Right? Got it right today. Welcome to the pod, Harrison, man. Thank you for joining us.
But I appreciate this, man. This is nice. I love this vibe.
I appreciate you being here. And I'm excited about this conversation, bro, because I empathize with men, but men especially in relationships. I feel like we get the short end of the stick when it comes to like who we are and what we're supposed to be when it comes to relationships with females, right? I feel like females get a lot of the attention. They get a lot of the the expectedness of the focus in relationships. Like,
for sure,
everyone expects the focus to be on the females. Like, we don't care about the man. Like, you could take care of yourself. The focus is on the females. But I want to talk about the untold side of love.
Okay.
Right? Untold side of the relationships between men and women. Focusing mainly on the men. I could be a little selfish today.
Okay, but right. Be selfish, man.
Okay, all right. You're giving me permission, so we could be selfish.
For sure.
So for starters, I want to give folks a little background of yourself for them. So just talk briefly about your educational background, and then go into your professional background. Just to let's lay the foundation of the conversation.
Yeah, man. So I've been a cognitive behavioral therapist now in the Bahamas since about 2011, which is when I actually graduated from my final studies at Texas A&M University Commerce. Prior to that, I was doing a lot of understudying in Dickinson State University. And a lot of people don't know this, but I actually got a full ride football scholarship to actually go off to school, in which I utilized that to study psychology. Okay. So
what position you played?
So I started off as defensive end.
Okay.
And then I graduated to linebacker.
Oh.
I wasn't as fit as I needed to be, and I didn't quite have the football IQ. But I eventually caught on, and I felt like that was a better position for how I thought and how I played.
Right.
So I made that work, bro.
Oh, that's dope, man.
Man. That's dope. And then, luckily enough, I had a father who is a clinical psychologist here in the country, Dr. Wayne Thompson. We now work in the practice relationship management. And I've been there for about over 10 years, helping individuals in the area of self-development, as well as helping couples in the areas of dating, marriage, and sometimes even divorce. and life changes and adjustments.
And your history with your working with your dad, how has that been in your growth in your profession?
Yeah, it isn't as intrusive as a lot of people would think.
Okay.
We have our own lanes. We work in the same building under the same company, but we have our own clientele.
Okay.
So of course, I'm not him. I have a very different view on how relationships are operating nowadays.
Okay.
And I was fortunate enough to have that space to kind of develop my own professional personality, my brand of therapy, because, I'm not going to be a therapist for everybody. But I was fortunate enough to have that kind of space to explore the ins and outs of how I think my country needs to be helped.
Oh, wow. I like that perspective. How I think my country needs to be helped, or how I would want to be helped by, an individual in my country, based off of, I'm assuming, where our country is at this moment and what people are going through.
Right, for sure, bro. Because, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yep.
But there's different language. I think there's different approaches and there's different understandings that we have to take considering the times that we're in. And I just saw that there was such a gap in between people who are in this field and people who are actually going through these particular problems. And I felt like we needed to bridge that with relevance. We needed to bridge that with familiar faces. You know me on social media a lot. Yep. And I feel like that has been my way of reaching people that would have otherwise never known to reach out to a therapist or to even recognize that they're dealing with something that could actually be treated.
So let's talk about therapy. So how have you seen therapy and the use of therapy pivot or transition from what it was, 20 years ago to what it is now? Like, because I know that, therapy and talking to someone and getting help, getting mental help is something that is becoming a lot more customary now. People are comfortable doing it. But I'm sure being in the business as long as you've been in it, you've directly seen that growth.
Yeah.
How is that growth happening, and how do you, is it a good thing? I mean, obviously it's a good thing, but do you think we are where we should be at this point?
It's been difficult, I would say, in the earlier years because, in this religious country that we live in.
You pray it away.
You pray it away, bro. You don't go to see no therapist. What you going to therapy for when you could just pray, right? Yeah. And I think the issue is we didn't see that people could know God and get help at the same time. Yeah. Those two things couldn't exist simultaneously. So the introduction of therapy into this country was breaking into those spaces where people just overly spiritualized a lot of issues. So there was this kind of teaching period where I had to show people this isn't necessarily a spiritual issue. This isn't a demon. This isn't some kind of generational curse. This is a behavioral problem. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there had to be some grace and understanding that I am bringing information to a culture where we don't necessarily have a foundation for this to be okay. And today we still fight the stigma of, going to a therapist must mean that you're not okay. But as long as you have free will and you're able to make choices, going to therapy as a choice is an indicator that you love yourself. And so I'm trying to show people through education, through awareness, sometimes a little bit through comedy, that we all could use therapy in some way, shape, and form. Yeah. And nobody's crazy for wanting to be a better version of themselves.
Now, I've grown to accept that the same way we go and have an annual physical,
right,
we need to have an annual mental.
Oh, for sure, bro.
I mean, and I
talk that.
I am working that into my yearly thing. If I go and get my annual physical, I go and get my teeth, go to the dentist, check my eyes, all these things. It's good to make sure your mental is up to point.
And you know why that's so valid, bro? I think we have this bad habit of waiting until there's the problem to go and check things out, right?
Absolutely.
And when it comes to therapy, I am so sorry. There is only so much I could do in the last hour when you decide to come to me when your marriage is on the brink of destruction and fall apart, So the more proactive we could be, the more longevity we have. The more longevity we have, the more impact we can create over time. And each one teaches one. That's how we save each other.
Absolutely. So let's lay the foundation for this conversation I want to have, right? So my first question, and what I kind of want to set the mood with, is how do you assist people in navigating relationships, right? Yeah. Male and female relationships. What's your approach in navigating that?
So I have this foundational approach where I think the only way relationships can work is if we understand that we are actually different people that need different things. We're the same in terms of equity. We all want to be loved. We all want security. We all want trust, safety. But how we actually relate to those things is radically different. When we don't respect differences, we end up expecting ourselves out of the opposite sex. And just like I told my boy the other day, who wanted a woman that could drink Guinness with him, who wanted a woman that understood sports on a scientific level, and then who lastly wanted a woman who wasn't going to stress him out. I say, but I think you like mine. I think you like mine, bro.
You're looking for mine,
This the wrong kind of therapy. And we joked, we laughed, and I said, isn't it interesting how what it is we say we want in the other person is really just us looking for ourselves in someone who can deliver that. So I feel like the foundation of any healthy relationship, marriage, dating, even sometimes in the workplace, it's understanding that we are different and that's not the problem. But the effort is in learning how to bridge that difference with understanding and grace.
Oh man, bro, men in particular, and I learned this from my dad, right? We look for the perfect soulmate or the perfect partner, perfect wife, right? Like your friend said, I looking for someone who could sit and watch sports with me and dissect the sports and understand all the terminology, who could drink some Guinness with me the way I drink Guinness, and be able to hold it down and all it, and like it's like, bro, that don't exist. You know what I mean? Like all of us are different, individually different as human beings. And I think it's really on us to really understand that as men, right? Because I think for the most part, women are pretty open with, accepting the differences with the opposite sex. I find that it's men who, like once they see one or two things they don't like they skip it on and trying to find someone else.
Facts.
And, I think the beauty in relationships is when you find someone who may not have everything you're looking for, but let's say they have like 80%. That last 20%, you decide, man, I could work with that, right? I could, try and get that up to 90% or 95%. It ain't gonna never be perfect, right? It could always be that percentage where you just gotta say, all right, I can't touch that one.
For sure.
But I think there is going to be a level of acceptance where you'll be able to say, man, you're not perfect or you're not 100% of like what I'm looking for, but the percentage is high enough for me to accept. And I think like as men, if we could get to that level, relationships would be so much easier. But I'm not the cognitive behavioral therapist here.
But what's wild though? You may not be that, but it's like you have the understanding of absolutely. Exactly what it is. And in a weird kind of way, I went off to get certified, to study, to become equipped to actually show people what they already know. It just goes to show it's not necessarily knowledge that you progress on, it's the application of that knowledge.
Absolutely.
And one of the main goals of a therapist is to kind of reframe that same information in a different way that can help that person gain some insight in ways they couldn't see before. And so you find that people who are not open to differences are actually not interested in growth. That is a very foundational principle I've observed over 10 plus years. It's actually a thing that I look for and call out as a red flag. When we are threatened by differences and we look at those differences as the thing that we have to stomp out, I put up my antennas immediately.
Wow. So let's set this foundation, right? So men in relationships, that's what I want this conversation to be about, right? And this topic is important to me because I see so much men not getting the attention that they deserve or that they need in relationships. And when I say attention, I'm not talking about like all of the focus is on them. I'm talking about like men's needs are majority of the time ignored because we are expected to prioritize our strength, our success, prioritize our logic, right? And we are supposed to ignore our emotions.
For sure.
Right? The emotions that we want to express, the emotions that we feel, like we're just supposed to ignore those because we are men. And we are taught that men can't be emotional. Like, bro, just swallow that and move on, right? How do you deal with with men coming up traditionally with that type of mindset?
Yeah, that's been challenging, bro. If I could sit with that for a minute. I've tried to frame strength as one of the greatest deceptions of our manhood. And when I say strength, I'm talking about that egotistical strength.
Absolutely.
That says it's all about what you show the world,
Yeah.
and not necessarily about the quality of life that you're living in this world, right? Because those who are strong always need proof that they're strong. And as long as you need proof of strength, you're constantly in a state of needing to be validated for the strength that you claim to have. But what is interesting, bro, those men who are able to actually admit where they aren't strong, they are actually now able to either reach out to people that can help them grow in that area, or learn to get support in those areas. And I think we have it wrong where it's like we're not supposed to be strong in all areas, but the areas that we're supposed to be strong in, we need to be strong in those, and we got to learn how to strategically be weak. I call it strategically.
How to strategically be weak.
Yes.
Wow.
Because strength doesn't allow that as a healthy concept to even entertain. You know? You think about being strategically weak as choosing the inconvenience of what it means to feel. Right? I can't feel something without existing in that feeling. And I feel like a lot of times as men, we go through quiet battles and silent battles. And so we've learned how to perform. We've learned how to do the right thing in spite of being angry, how to say the right thing in spite of being angry. And that's fine. It creates productivity in the world. But when you look at male fulfillment, it's very low, bro. You know, happiness is not an indicator for us in terms of what we're going to do. We know that we have no choice in the matter. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that is what we should reduce our life to, just the function of our manhood.
Wow. I have to let that breathe. You say a lot.
Yeah, that was a little bit just then.
You say a lot. Wow. Our strengths cause us not to even focus on the idea of being strong.
Yes. The current idea of strength.
The current ideals of strength.
Yeah.
Forces us not to even focus on weaknesses because we're taught that it shouldn't exist to a certain extent.
Yeah, bro. We don't really have to teach men how to be strong per se. That's embedded in a lot of our DNA as providers, as leaders, as men who have a instinctual drive to kind of go out there and take care of family, take care of community, take care of business. But what we do need to teach men is the other side of manhood that we often associate with being feminine, right? That's emotionality. Emotions are not just in women, they in me too. And if my wife has the opportunity to be angry, I should as well. If my wife has the opportunity to go through stress, I should as well. And only men can create those spaces. We can't think that women can create those spaces for men because they're not going to be what we need it to be.
Well, explain that. What should the space be for men to feel comfortable being emotional? Like, what does that space look like?
I think to kill the first myth that it's not okay to not be okay. I think when I can show my brother, whether that's my biological brother, my friend, my cousin, family member, whomever, that I can exist in this space and not be totally defined by the space that I am in, I think that encourages that brother to now exist in what is real for him. Because whether we acknowledge it or not, right, what I'm feeling and going through inside me is going to happen regardless of what I say in this world. So either I'm going to acknowledge that or I'm going to pretend like it doesn't exist. And we've seen when we pretend like it doesn't exist, it's only a matter of time before you A, explode, or B, implode.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%. So, you know, we're talking about the challenges that men face, right? And you laid a good foundation with, you know, the ability to express ourselves emotionally or the lack thereof in relationships because of the stigma that is on men as, you know, being the strength in the relationships of being the providers and whatnot.
Right.
So what are ways that we can debunk that myth? Like outside of, I know you say like we need to create an environment of men for men. Are there any other ways? Is there any other things we can do just to allow men to be able to express themselves comfortably, express themselves emotionally?
Yeah, I'm thinking of a big V word right now, vulnerability, right? And a lot of men don't even have that cultured ability in themselves to be honest when they look in the mirror. And so, you know, I think back just to myself, how much I have struggled to admit when I was hurt, or how much I struggle to admit that I feel lost right now. Because I'm very aware that I have a wife, I got a family, I have people who are depending upon me. I'm hyper aware of this. But I also realize that the more space I put between my internal self and my external self, the harder I made it for me. And so the first thing has to be creating those spaces of stillness where you can actually see what rises to the surface when I'm not performing. When I don't have to be strong, when I don't have to be in the know, when I don't have to be competent even, what shows up in truth? And then can you receive whatever shows up regardless of how it feels? I think that has to start off as a personal journey first before we could ever spread that out in the community.
Wow. And then, so, you know, that speaks to, you know, creating an environment where men could feel comfortable being emotional.
Yeah.
But this other myth of, you know, men are supposed to be the providers, right? I feel like this creates the stress on men, right? To know that they need to be providers and then to provide, right? So it causes us to, you know, sometimes make decisions that, you know, could affect our ability to walk in freedom.
True.
Right? We sometimes, you know, break the law, or, you know, do things that we shouldn't do, that are a bit sketchy. We put ourselves in situations because we feel like, man, this is the only way that I know that I can provide or be a provider. Is it that we need to kind of redefine what it means to provide?
I think so, man, because, you know, the first thing that came to my head, just being honest, is how much money I'm making, right? And provision isn't just so linear as to your financial contribution to a situation. Provision can be emotional support. Provision can be presence. Provision can be direction, advice, influence. It's not always just money. Now, of course, money dominates the conversation because life is real. But I think beyond just that one thing we're constantly associating to provision, there's so many different areas of leadership that we're neglecting. Because I could tell you countless men who make north of $1 million a year in this country, bro. And their family has everything that you could imagine. Go to the best schools, they have the best decked out homes, driving the fanciest cars, and yet still they're unhappy and unfulfilled. Yet still they're struggling with anxiety. So we understand provision isn't necessarily just your ability to pour money into something. It's also recognizing the unique lane that you occupy by paying attention to your gifts and your strengths, and then choosing to be bold and standing in that for what that really is.
But does the pressure? The pressure doesn't just come from society, right? Sometimes the pressure comes from the wife, the female involved. It comes from the family members, you know, because we money dominates this idea of a provider or provisions, and then when you aren't making enough, you know, there's this pressure that comes from all of these areas. You know, like how can men curb that, right? And you know, I don't know if it's a mental thing. I'm assuming that's a part of it, but you know, all of these pressures that men feel, how then can we turn that around and be like, look, here's my response to that, and here's the response that I need to have, that I should have, so that I'm not putting all of this pressure on me to be this said provider.
You gotta have knowledge of self, right? Because without knowledge of self, you become very impressionable as to what the world thinks you should be. And if the world is suggesting to me what Harrison should be, the world is right out the gate going to tell me that I'm not making enough money, that I'm not handsome enough, that I ain't packing enough heat under the belt, right? Because everything seems to be just a competition and comparison for men. And we have internalized that now within ourselves, where we now start to think as individuals that we're not worthy enough because we don't meet certain standards. But knowledge of self is understanding that the authority is in you already. You're not looking for that outside of you, it's already in you. You just have to look within to find that, to own that and walk in that boldly, because that's the only way we can change the narrative. Knowledge of self. You find when men don't know themselves, what shows up? Ego, arrogance, I don't want to call it toxic masculinity, but you find that these toxic traits of needing to step on other people as proof that I am worthy and valuable starts to creep in. You don't build societies and families with that. You know, that's how you kill families and societies.
Wow. Absolutely. Another challenge men face in relationships is the communication style. No.
Oh man.
You know, going back to your friend who, you know, wants a woman who, you know, could watch sports and understand sports the way that he does, or someone that could drink, you know, Guinness the way that he wants to drink Guinness. The way that we communicate as individuals, and this was big for me. This is a big learning thing for me. Like my dad taught me a lot of this, and how men communicate and how women communicate. Women are emotional creatures, so
for sure
their communications come from an emotional state. Men tend to be more, you know, logical and rational in our thinking and our communication. And most men, like, if you don't understand that, if you don't know that about yourself and understand how women communicate, like that can cause a lot of friction in relationships, right?
For sure, bro.
And that's a challenge. How, you know, what are your recommendations, like, when we're talking about, you know, men and women communicating in relationships, for there to be to you know, decrease some of those challenges, or decrease some of those disagreements when it comes to communication, or I should say misunderstandings. How can they curb that and learn to communicate better?
Yeah. It'll always be easier, in my opinion, for a man to communicate to another man, because there's a lot of shared experiences we don't have to talk about that's already known.
Yep.
Right? So all men perpetually live in this kind of nuanced potential relationship structure. I don't have to know you, but if we peep something happening right now, I look at you,
we know what it is.
We know what that is exactly.
100%.
Right? We don't have to add words to that. We don't have to figure that out on a deeper level.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
Of course, now women are different. They're going to see the world from a totally different perspective. And so how I like to frame it, imagine a coin, a quarter, heads and tails. You can't turn one side of that coin without the opposite side also turning in the opposite direction, no matter how small that shift or movement. If both heads and tails on a quarter were able to face in the same direction, what does that say about the state that that quarter is in, right? It's probably damaged, right? It's probably not worth anything. So quite literally, I have to choose to receive your experience as real and valid, simply because it is your experience. I think what happens is we, instead of receiving people, we evaluate people against our system that we believe to be right. And when people don't fit into that system, we dismiss them. Right?
And that's society, right? That's with everything. Like,
that's with everything.
If your opinion ain't my opinion, then you wrong.
Like right out the gate.
Yeah.
And so what happens is we engage in this pursuit of finding someone who's more compatible.
Yep.
Right? And it's like, you're not going to find that person.
Yeah, they don't exist.
Right? They don't exist, especially not in that framework that you're assuming is right. So it's understanding that these differences are things we have to reframe. We have to really become students again to learn, how do I communicate to this person that actually receives things in a different way than I do? Because I know I have love for you. I know that I love you, but that doesn't always mean that I know how to love you, right? And it takes time to really pay attention to how this person best receives that. Do they like these kind of words? Does this tone work for them? What are better times to really have harder conversations than others? I feel like as men, we tend to think simplistically about a lot of things. And so the more simple you think something is, the less likely you are to engage in healthy communication that actually produces that solution. So you got to watch out for thinking about problems as being too simple. Because when things are simple, you make assumptions, bro.
Yeah.
And when you make assumptions, you're going to have fights and arguments.
Yeah. That's miscommunications, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about myths in relationships, right? We spoke about the challenges just now, and I want to tackle some myths, right? 3 myths that I've pointed out. One being that men don't want to commit.
Okay.
The second being, and we touched on this a bit already, that men aren't emotionally invested. And then the third, which is my favorite, this myth of happy wife, happy life. So let's kind of quickly just chop down these myths, and I want to take it from your perspective, because my outlook is you've seen the majority of these play out in your work, right?
For sure.
From the sessions that you do.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to understand it from, like, how do you deal with this? How do you communicate the resolve, or the best way to approach it, with your clients when facing these different things that come up?
For sure. So the first myth, what was that again?
It was that men don't want to commit.
Men don't want to commit.
Yeah.
Boy, if you ask me, right, honest to God, men pay a much higher price for committing than women do.
100%.
Okay?
100%.
It's all on us when it comes to commitment, because when we commit our life, we commit our mind, we commit our soul, we commit our resources, and we maintain that commitment in spite of our emotional state. Okay? You never hear a man being asked if he is happy. You often hear asked of a man, are you providing? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? But women have this pseudo authority to weaponize their unhappiness as a justification now for why commitment is different for them. Now, I'm bashing my women, right? I'm bashing my women at all, right? I married one.
Yeah.
Right? I gave birth. Well, my wife gave birth to one. We had one.
Yeah.
But I think society makes it very easy to give authority to feelings where authority never existed in feelings to begin with. Your feelings are just a reflection of what you're experiencing. But that experience doesn't negate the principle of how this is supposed to be. And I think as men, it is our duty to make sure that we, number one, identify the principle, communicate that principle, and then to support that principle through our actions and how we show love and how we communicate in our families. So in my mind, men do want to commit. But how can a man be expected to commit when the foundation of this commitment can be thrown away by someone's upset feelings, right? So you think about the kind of scary place that puts men in. That's survival mode.
Yeah.
101. I got to make sure that you're tried and true. I got to make sure that you're tested. I got to make sure that you are a safe space for me to actually invite you into the space, because once you're here, you could really do damage. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that's why we tend to delay, or why it seems like we delay getting married, because we really just want to be safe.
So that sounds like it leads into the second myth then, where men appear not to want to be emotionally invested in relationships.
For sure.
And it sounds like it's because of the state of vulnerability that they need to get to in order to be invested, or what that investment causes, right? It causes them to go deep into that state of, being vulnerable in relationships.
For sure, bro. As you said earlier, we are dominated more so by logic, right? We're not just logic, but we're dominated by it, which means it makes logical sense to not invest in something that you already see as a dangerous thing.
That's a problem, yeah.
You know what I mean? That don't work in our logical mind.
Yeah.
And so it's not that men don't want to be emotional, but men are already deducing and analyzing, what's the kickback going to be when I actually allow myself to venture into this space? How do I, A, know you're not going to use this against me? B, in a more facetious way, I don't want to end up in the group chat. I don't want to pour my heart out. I don't want to pour my soul out. Pride is very important for men, right? I need to know that this is a safe space for me.
It's between us.
It's between us.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes because a woman's honor code, let me say this, a woman's honor code means, for the sake of truth, she can say what she need to say. Okay? And so you find for that reason a woman's mouth is able to either build up or cut down, right?
Yep.
Because their honor code says that for the sake of truth, I can say what I need to say. Our honor code, bro, is there's a way things happen. In spite of being upset, in spite of being angry right now, this is how you speak. This is when you speak. And this is how you go about doing that. So when women don't necessarily respect our line of thinking, we interpret that as disrespect, right? Because if you can't respect the processes that I'm going through in my mind, you're telling me that this ain't a safe space. Now, in the same way, my wife may sometimes, or a woman may want a man to sometimes throw that organization to the wind. Show me you down for me. And you ain't down for me if you ain't being emotionally reckless like me. See, you ain't no rider.
That's that toxicity though.
Because that's their honor code.
Yeah.
And you watch how when women get together, how they speak, how they validate each other's emotional states. And how when men get together, we validate each other's thinking patterns. We can learn that maybe this is a bridge, a middle ground, where we can learn to actually validate one another as spouses in a relationship. I have now realized there is value in emotionality even when I don't understand it. It's value there because even if I don't understand it, bro, I'm going to inherit it one way or the other, right? So I have a daughter, Haley Rose. She's 5. She was born on my birthday, August 23rd. We just
steal their birthday from you.
We just celebrated our birthday, right?
Wow,
August beat me up, bro.
that's dope.
You know how sometimes they'll watch their iPad and YouTube, the algorithm will send something very out the way to them.
Yeah.
And it was like a scary thing with monsters in the closet. So I noticed when it was time to really wind her down, to put her in her bed, she didn't want to go in her room. And I was trying to say to myself, Haley Rose, what's going on, baby? We always do this. What's happening? She said she's scared. Now the logical part of me, the simple part of me, just wanted to appeal to reality. Ain't nothing to be scared of in here. Let's go to sleep.
Yeah.
Because logic is the fastest way to results. Okay? That's why we do it as men. That's also why it seems so inconvenient to have to deal with emotionality.
Emotions, got you.
Because what I going around the bend for when I could just walk right to it, right?
Yeah.
But I resisted that urge, okay? I said to my daughter, show me where these monsters are. So she goes to the door frame and she's pointing in the corner like this. And I'm like, they in there? All right, solid. So I take her pink bat out the toy chest. I open up the closet. And I'm like, but if any of y'all monsters in here ever have anything to say to my little girl again, y'all gonna know. And I start slamming my fists and the bat into the clothes and I'm fighting these monsters for real. And I pull a shirt down out of the closet and I put it in the bag so it could have a little weight. So I pull the bag out and I'm like, I kill him, baby. Right? And her face is bewildered. She's just like, so they was real then? Right? She watched me go out to the big garbage, throw it in the garbage, and as I'm walking, I'm talking, send a message to all y'all monsters. This ain't the place. She was able to go back in her room and go to sleep. The inconvenience in having to meet her where she existed emotionally is not natural for me as a man. It's not natural really for any man. But if you don't learn to deal with that emotional situation at the level that it exists, you will be haunted by it. Because if I told my daughter, right, to go in the room, she now has to deal with her very real fear
By herself.
while also not being able to sleep by herself.
Yeah.
I can inherit that in the morning, bro.
Yeah.
If I say that I want to be over something, I got to learn how to properly deal with something. And that means I have to see this something, not how I feel about it, but in the way you're feeling about it, because it's real for you.
And the way you do it is because of the age that she is. Like, had she been a little older, would your response been different?
All women are the same, bro. I don't care if they 3. I don't care if they 12. I don't care if they just gone through menopause or first heartbreak.
Yeah.
It's about showmanship. Women look for the cue and nuance that this experience I'm going through is seen by you. Right? So me and you may be able to eat our chicken with just black pepper and salt, bro. But when you season that for the wife, she may need some cayenne on that. She may need some cumin on that, right? She may need some, I don't know, black garlic with truffle oil on that to really make this palatable, right?
You used to be throwing it down in the kitchen.
You know, there will be signs. And it's kind of like, we may say that's a lot of extra, right?
Yeah.
Like, why you just don't be rational and logical and see that this is what it is?
Yeah.
But if you don't deal with that at the level that it exists, it grows. It exacerbates.
No, got you.
We as men now open the door for someone else or something else to now influence that woman because we refuse to see it for her experience. So we basically paved the way for someone else to kind of pull our relationship from under us.
Instead of addressing it ourselves.
Right, because we don't want to be inconvenienced. The average man is so focused on what he wants, he doesn't see the need to be inconvenienced because it makes logical sense.
It makes not logical sense not to?
Like, I shouldn't have to be inconvenienced because this is so logical.
Got you. Yeah.
But you're not dealing with a logical problem.
Yeah.
You're dealing with an emotional one.
problem. Yeah.
Right.
Man. we could sit for 30 minutes right now.
I'm telling you.
But we must move on. So my favorite myth that I want to hear from you. I've spoken about this a few times on the pod already. But happy wife, happy life.
Yeah.
You know, growing up, that is what I heard.
Same.
So every man, I don't care where the man was, but I don't think my dad said it. I don't think I ever heard my dad say it. Can't remember. He might have said it. He might have said it in jest, right?
A joke.
Might have believed it a little bit, or whatnot. But that is what I have been taught. Happy wife, happy life. If you want to have a peaceful life, just make sure your wife happy.
Boy,
don't worry about your happiness. As long as she happy, you could be straight. And that is entirely a lie. But don't listen to me.
Bro, you so right.
Yeah,
it's a lie, but we can't negate the fact that it works, right? What's the fastest way to get a Joneser from around your car, bro?
I could think of two fast ways.
Two fast
ways. Give him what you want. Give him $1 or whatever. Or tell him come from around my car.
Joneses are very rejection tolerant.
Yep.
Because they're
no, they used to yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it ain't really a wall for them to hear a no.
Got you.
They smooth talkers, man.
Got you.
They done lining you up from. They start walking from the light. They already see you. You catch them in their eye. They know they got something to work with.
Ain't nothing like when you're like catch them. You be like, I know this way coming across.
Coming. I see him. You in the periphery, just trying not to acknowledge it, right? And it's like you gotta give them what they're asking for.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I'm not saying you always got to do that, because sometimes you can't give people everything that they're asking for. But when you give this woman what she's asking for, that's a woman who isn't complaining. That's a woman who is quiet. That's a woman who is content. That's a woman who's living that soft life that so many women are looking after, or I should say lusting after. But it also goes to show how easily we dismiss the value of what that man is experiencing as well, right? So I prefer the counter to that. Happy house, happy spouse.
Happy house, happy. What's a happy
or
house?
Happy spouse, happy house.
I got you.
Meaning spouse could be me or you.
Both. Got you.
Right.
Got you.
My desires are equally as valid as yours.
Yep.
And if I'm going to work to show you that I see yours as real, you need to work to see mine as real. And even if you don't understand it, like for the longest time I watch anime, bro, and my wife swear to God, I'd just be watching garbage. And it's like, I mean, you don't even give it a chance. You don't even sit down and watch it.
Yeah.
But you realize the more you try to understand what's important, the less you seem to understand. It seems to be more practical to just receive that this is important for the person and then learn how to respect it. Right? So, it's football season coming up now, bro. We got a big 80-inch out front. And her shows just coincide with my Cowboys game.
Oh, man. Cowboys. Sorry to help with that.
Ah, boy. It's
go
a struggle.
ahead, though.
Winning ain't everything, bro. Okay? I think there's a lot of lessons to learn outside of winning. And the Cowboys have understood that.
All the lessons.
You know what I mean?
Outside of winning.
And it's like, sometimes I find myself trying to convince my wife as to why what I'm watching is of somehow a better moral thing to do than what she wants to watch, right? And it's like, I'm dismissing her. I think so many times we moralize our preferences to get our way in relationships. Where it's like we add that Jesus component to a situation that it doesn't belong to.
Yeah.
And now our partner feels guilty for wanting what they want. When really relationships work on the willful losing, fighting for second place, so that first place can be reserved for you. And if you see that first place is constantly reserved for you in my life, you now want to repay that favor by doing the same.
Yeah.
That's harmony.
Yeah.
But so many of us don't ever get to that spot because it's man versus woman. This versus that, tit for tat, keeping score. We never get to that harmonic place.
Boy, keeping the score. You remember when you do this, and then you remember when you do that.
The receipts, that WhatsApp chat log, everything.
Oh my goodness, bro. Oh, that's real though. That is absolutely real. But I like it though. You know, happy spouse, happy house, because you know I truly feel happiness is a two-way street.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
You know, and again, I can't look for my happiness in my spouse, and you know, I think for her it's the same. Like we each have to define and define and find that happiness for ourselves, so that we can, you know, bring our happiness to this union, right?
Word.
And we both can work on our marital happiness together,
right?
And I think that's important.
But you know what's interesting about what you said though? People may not like me for this, but happiness is actually not the first goal in something like marriage. If you make happiness the first goal, marriage ain't gonna make sense.
100%.
And it really goes to show how we have to conquer our own selves, really become the masters of our own happiness. Because I'm speaking from my perspective as a married man. I'm going to spend more time in service to my wife than receiving from her. And that's something that I have to be a whole man to actually do. I can't love my wife and serve my wife from a broken place, because then I'm going to need my wife to be something she can't be for me. Right? So guess what other woman could be something? Anyone else. And I feel like as men, we unintentionally create this environment where we grow disdain for our women, and then we find a woman who's doing something in the area we wanted just our wife to do, just that piece. And all of a sudden now we lose our mind and we commit to something that don't want to commit back to us. So don't aim for 100% in idealism. I say the golden zone is actually 60-70%. If you got 60% of your needs being met, and 60% of things are actually working properly, that's something you need to fight for.
So it ain't 80-20 no more.
Nah, bro. Well,
60-40, 70-30.
I just saying it because I think sometimes we look for confirmation before we start.
Got you.
You know, like I need that 100% guarantee that you was the wife before I make you the wife.
Okay, I got you. No, yeah.
You know what I mean? Just speaking from ourselves as men.
Yeah.
Because when you look for idealism, you spend too much time looking.
Yeah. You spend forever looking. You'll never find it.
Right?
Yeah.
But that woman, she was meeting 60% of your needs, bro.
Yeah.
But because you haven't conquered your own happiness, you started to put responsibilities on that woman that she could never fulfill.
Yeah.
So you pass on wifey material for a unicorn that you ain't gonna never find. See, we fill that gap in women. It's not a woman that exists out there who is perfect in every single way. We gotta fill that gap where she isn't.
You know, my dad used to say, like, you know, God never gives us a finished product, right? He gives us, 60%.
Boy, listen.
It used to be 80%, but when I was coming up, that number going down a bit. That's fine. I
Inflation, man.
Gotta add VOD to that. But 60%. If you could find God to give you 60%, that other 40% on you.
Yeah, babe.
And that's so real, because a lot of the times, like, men would say, my wife don't dress how I wanted to dress, or like look how I wanted to look. And I just look at them and be like, bro, what you doing to get her to the point that you wanted to be at, right? Like, you got to say, here, babe, let's go to the hairdresser, or here, babe, I bought you this, or let's go shopping, or, like that 40% that isn't where you want it to be, like, that's your project at that point. You got to work on that and build that up to a percentage that, you would love for it to be. May not be 100% still, but, a more than 60, maybe closer to 85, 90%,
That's profound wisdom. So it doesn't exist until we create it then.
Yeah.
So I think that's profound, because it says that the things we're looking for quite literally will not be found until we make the decision first to do it.
Right.
And then we get to experience the motivation from whatever that produces.
Right. And I think if us as men could learn that and accept that and display that in our relationships, I think, we go right back to happy spouse, happy house. because
I love that.
you know, you pouring into your wife what you want to get out of her, and
For
you know,
sure.
with that pouring, she is going to, you know, incubate that and give you, you know, heaven on earth. You
You
know,
said
at that
it, bro.
point.
You can't do nothing with a woman that feels seen, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
She will fight tooth and nail.
Absolutely.
Whether it's just buffalo wings you want on a Sunday to your favorite brand of whiskey, she could find that.
Absolutely. You
She
know,
could find that.
and I think it's special when it gets to that point in a relationship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nah, man, this was good. This was good. Saying it now, you definitely got to come back on the board, bro. Definitely good, because you know, it's a lot of things that you said that I would really like to dive into some more. You know?
For sure.
I don't want to be here all day. This, you know, we'll be here for 3-4 hours talking about this.
It's a starter platter.
Yeah. Give you a little taste.
A little taste of something, everything. You know?
But I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you coming on this board and sharing some of your wisdom. Would love to have you back to have, you know, another conversation, right?
Sure.
And dive a little deeper into some of the things we touched on today. But for persons interested, right? Because, you know, whenever I have another therapist that comes on, and we talk about this all the time, like people who may need help, may not know that they need help though, or are scared to get help, or don't know where to get help at.
Right.
What do you say to those persons? And you know, for you, I'm talking about like men or women in relationships by themselves, like, you know, anyone that has that behavioral issues that they need help with.
For sure.
You know, what's the best way to go about reaching out?
Yeah. The best way is still the classic way, through my office. Relationship management, of course, is the building. But if anybody ever was in need of someone to talk to just on a very basic level, or you know, for a long time you've been battling these repeat things in your life, imposter syndrome, depression, anxiety, self-worth, trying to heal and recover from trauma, trying to figure out who I now am after trauma. These are all things that cognitive behavioral therapy can help with. So if you ever wanted to reach out to me, 356-798304, that is the direct line to book. Now, for those of us who may not be able to afford therapy, because therapy ain't cheap, right? I pour into my Facebook every day.
Okay.
Facebook is my way of reaching people who otherwise would not be able to afford to come into my office. And I am sure that there's a post, there's a video, there's a status, there's something on my page that is relevant to what it is that you got going on right now. So I always say reach out to my social media pages. I run all of those pages by myself. So it's all just my eyes only. So feel free to open up, feel free to talk. I respond to DMs when I get the chance. So that's another avenue as well.
What's the handles for those pages?
Yeah, so on Facebook it's Harrison Thompson Official. On Instagram it's HT4Real. That's the number 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So if you want to get in touch, you need some assistance, right? You need someone to talk to, you know, tap in with Harrison.
We here, man. We outside.
I think it'll be beneficial to you. And, you know, again, I say, even if you don't have issues, get your mental checked, man.
Check in.
Get yearly check-ins. I think it's important. And, you know, I stamp Harrison as someone who is beneficial for you to check in with.
Respect that,
Yeah,
man.
man. Appreciate you. Well, that brings us to the part of the pod where I want to leave with you a milestone. And the milestone today, you know, is in relation to relationships and what we've been discussing, right? And it's simply, all relationships go through hell. Real relationships get through it, right?
Nice.
You can't expect relationships to be perfect. They're not. You can't expect your spouse to be perfect, or your girlfriend or boyfriend to be perfect, because we are imperfect beings.
Wow.
The goal is to work through it, right? To understand what the issue is, understand who we are and what we're bringing or not bringing to the situation, and just try to work through it with your wife, your husband, your spouse, your partner, because it's easy to give up. That's the easiest thing we could do, right? And if it's a relationship worth having, it should be a fight that we're willing to take on. All right, so keep up the fight, because it's only going to bode well for both of you in the end. All right. Well, Harrison, thank you for joining me once again on this pod, man. I truly appreciate it. I look forward to us doing this again at some point in the future.
We have to, bro.
No, absolutely.
We have to. We leave too much things on the table,
things
man.
on the table, bro.
You got to come back at it.
Yeah, we got more to talk about.
You heard it first.
Well, you know, this is, I'm taking a break after this pod, guys. Gonna take a few months off. It's been a busy year. I had fun, but I hope you guys enjoyed all the episodes that we've done so far for this year. Any episode that you've missed, make sure you go back and listen and watch them on all the platforms where it's available. I'll see you guys in a couple of months, and enjoy yourselves during this time where, you know, I'm not feeding you the way that I would normally feed you on a weekly basis. All right. But as always, my vision and goal for this podcast is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right. Until next time, you guys stay blessed.